Chad. I am a uh, services engineer from Triple Play. I'll be going over the system. I'm going to be focusing on mostly uh, the features that are included and configured within the scope of the Farmington Hills system. Our system as a whole, just to preface, is quite diverse, and each of the features themselves are also quite diverse as far as ways to use them. So I'm going to go over plenty of basics. Feel free to ask any questions, and you know, don't be afraid that we won't be able to do like any other Q&As or trainings or anything like that like along the way as this system is more fully deployed and finalized and things like that towards the finalization of the site. So as we um, clarify more and more things. But yeah, um, did anybody have any questions beforehand as far as what the system basically does before I proceed? Okay, so I will proceed with the training. Do you mind if I go ahead and share my screen? I do see some sort of a placeholder for this for the Farmington Hills training.
Yep, go ahead,
Okay.
John. I will stop my screen. You can go ahead and share yours.
Okay, and don't be worried about this particular screen. This screen is basically just lets you know that the server is using a self-signed certificate. Basically, it's not recognized by any external authority, so it's just within the Farmington Hills network, and all you have to do is go ahead and proceed with the access to self-signed certificate, and that'll take you to the main login screen. Um, and then we can go ahead and log in. There haven't been any other accounts configured besides the admin accounts, so we can go ahead and log in with the default username and password there. And I'll, whoever will be accessing this mostly, we can go over more specifics as to configuring and clarifying that access. So this is the main Triple Play user interface. Go ahead.
Hey,
What is
Chad.
some? Go
Chad,
ahead.
I don't know if somebody wanted to ask a question there. I did have a comment on that.
Sure.
I think that we had a list of users set up.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, so I did see a list of users there. Of course, we do have to create passwords at setup. So um, I did want to get together at some point with whoever is going to be, creating those accounts. I didn't really want to sign random passwords just because those passwords would have to be also kind of managed by a central administrator. So if there's anybody who wants to get together to do that in the Farmington Hills end, I'm more than available to kind of walk through that process. So, but I didn't want to give too much insight as to the authentication management for the
sure.
purposes of this meeting. So, um, we can set that up through a separate time. I can show you what the interface looks like, but I don't want to go too in depth, especially for um, uh, more of the content end users because it
Yeah.
won't be as relevant since they won't be using it as an administrator. We've just logged in essentially to the main user interface of the Triple Play system. This is essentially a local network appliance that manages digital signage and IPTV for the site. So in that sense, basically we're handling all the set-top boxes that are displaying the content, as well as managing what's going to those set-top boxes. Um, and to kind of clarify what a set-top box is, it's essentially kind of like probably the closest comparison is maybe like a Roku or a Chromecast, like some sort of endpoint device that's displaying content, essentially. So uh, so we can basically assign different pieces of content, including IPTV, to all these different displays and also manage them. So what I'd like to do first is just go over kind of the important parts of this first page. So um, if you see in the top left, we have the triple play logo. We can use that always to get back to this page. You can just click on the triple play logo, will take you back to the home page. Under user applications, we have triple sign, which is our primary signage feature, which handles all of the signage content, layouts and playlists and things like that. The triple CMS feature, which may not be used too much uh, by end users, but it does kind of is a way to manage different video content and things like that. If you're trying to use a video on demand content and say um, maybe a channel lineup or um, a layout, which we'll cover more in depth as we go through signage. Triple event is our event trigger system. Specifically, this feature will allow you to go in and trigger these events via like a web page button, essentially. So when a time comes up, you can just click on the event, and then it'll basically change whichever displays are targeted by the event to show the triggered content. Quick drop is a way of easily, editing certain layouts by just dragging and dropping from, say, folders on your computer to change, maybe a particular cell. Um, and it's more for just ease of access, quick access, and those changes are always reflected, within the next uh, few seconds as it propagates across all the units that are displaying that content. So um, the next feature, triple choice, that isn't necessarily won't be necessarily used too much unless you guys want to create your own portal for the TV mode, which I can cover more in depth if you guys have any questions about that. But that's kind of veering away from the signage features. If we go to the down to the administration applications there, triple TV IP television, that's won't be used by end users too much, mostly by again administrators. It's a good way of basically going in and looking at the adapters we've configured for this particular site. We're using um, ClearQuam from Comcast to basically output IPTV to the system. That IPTV, those multicast streams, are being routed into the server um, on the back into peripheral cards, and then it's being routed back out to the endpoint STVs. The next feature is going to be the triple care client management. We'll go over that to some depth. That's the main user administration feature there, and we'll see a lot of different things there. That's where you'll manage endpoints and grouping and things like that for endpoints. So triple BOD will be more of a management feature. It's basically just to make sure that our video on demand is running correctly, for purposes of signage and things like that. And the encryption is just more for extra use in case there comes a need to encrypt your streams for whatever reason. If you have any questions about that, we'll go ahead and go to the first feature, which is going to be the triple sign digital signage, which is going to be our prime first and foremost feature that's configured on the system. So, any questions so far? All right. All right. So, upon accessing triple sign, we have a bunch of different categories here. Now, what I like to think about triple sign is just essentially thinking about it from left to right. If you look at the features in the top green bar just below the triple play logo, and if you think of this methodically in from left to right, it gives you an idea of what's the most important in getting things set up. and as well as how to best organize the system. So you obviously have the home at the very left. That will be on every feature there. That basically just takes you to the main page that you would see upon clicking that feature from um, the main interface. The button just to the right of that is going to be the hierarchy. Now I've set up this hierarchy essentially as to what I've seen in a spreadsheet that was sent out by Toshiba. So um, again, if there's any customizations that need to be made to this hierarchy, it's easily accessible. There are buttons to the top left that you can use to remove, edit certain things, and you can also drag and drop these different green boxes to different categories. If say a device needs to be repurposed for any reason, or maybe the device is in an incorrect spot. And if we scroll down, we'll see a bunch of these groups. Green means it's on and running. We can communicate with the device, and we can also see different uh, features about it. So if we open up the device dialog, we can see different information as its name, its unique MAC address, what type of device it is, its IP address, and then we can even go and say diagnostics and kind of see exactly what it's playing there. So we can see, on this concession monitor here, we have this pre-made content for the concession bar, and that will be, you can verify that. Say if you go to the concessions and look at the left monitor, it should be showing that content. And if we scroll down here, more organization. If ever it's down, that means the we can't communicate with the device. Either it's off or offline for some other reason. It could be a power issue or a network issue. So, but for the most part, it looks like all of these are online. And again, this is going to be the most important part. So anytime you say register a new unit and you get it into signage, the first thing you're going to need to do is make sure it's organized into the hierarchy. So say as soon as it hits the server, there's going to be basically like a long rectangular box on the left side. You don't see that right now because everything's organized already, but you'll basically just kind of drag and drop it into these sections right here and make sure they're organized. That way, you can start putting them. You can start assigning content to them because without organizing them, the system won't recognize them as appropriately organized displays to handle that content. So we'll just think about it from left to right. So moving on from the hierarchy, we have the content section. Now the content section has basically lots of different possibilities as far as uh, types of content to use. Say for backgrounds, those will be images. Um, and say the difference between backgrounds and say something like images to the right of that is that backgrounds will always go to the background should you choose to incorporate it into one of your layouts, which we'll cover in just a second. And that way you don't have to really worry about layers and things like that. It's always pushed to the back, and in contrast, images always go to the front. So if ever you have an image and you want to put it back, you will have to use the options to push it back a layer. So, and we can kind of go over. You might see for backgrounds. Let's actually go to images since that'll be likely more common. But basically, you have all of these. We have some default images that come with the server as well as a bunch that have been uploaded to this based on the content that was provided to me during deployment. And you can see different information about when it was modified, um, as well as their names and previews of those images. And then adding an entry is as simple as giving it a name, um, and then uploading uh, the image, and then well, browsing and then uploading it. So go back to content, and so there's a lot of other categories here, say image slideshows. Um, you might ask, what's in the context of our system, what are the differences between images and image slideshows, right? And that's just more of a modularization. So, you know, basically, the more individual images you have, the more granularity you have as far as, editing the specific layouts. If you have an image slideshow for a single layout, then in order to modify one aspect of the slideshow, you actually have to go into the slideshow rather than the image in the layout to edit that specific element. So I always recommend trying to do as much with images versus image slideshows. But if it's not something that you'll necessarily edit on an individual element basis, then slideshow may be the way to go. But I suggest tinkering with it and seeing how you prefer to edit your layouts. Video content, again, it's video content. Uh, you'll upload that essentially the same way as images. When you do upload the video content, it will take some time to transcode the videos to a format that's compliant with our signage system. So, based on the size of the video, it could take a few minutes or so. And then live TV that incorporates any IPTV elements you have, and live TV can be anything between network video on demand or standard like Comcast channels that we've configured in the system. So and the main difference between video and not live TV again is the easy multicast. That's the main discrepancy. So as long as you can make sure that you have excuse me, sorry, uh, multicast running to those endpoints, then you definitely have the ability to run live TV in your content. And then the rest are lots of different widgets and elements. Say HTML if you have some sort of uh, web image that you want to refer to, you can do that as well. But lots of different things to use as far as content. Next, we'll move on to templates. So, as far as content creation, not necessarily the most important part next to that, but say if you have a particular format you like to follow, this is kind of where you would specify your different cell dimensions and things like that. So we can go ahead and say go to this corporate 1080. This is just one of our default templates that we use. And basically, for any users that want to kind of take advantage of, more specific pixel dimensions and backgrounds and things like that for setting up more standardized layouts, this is the way to do it. Essentially, you can set up a bunch of different cells where, once you apply the template to your layout, it'll allow you to just drag and drop, which we'll see in just a bit. But there's a lot of numbers on here, basically just pixel dimensions to make things more organized whenever you attempt to create a new layout. So again, if you guys want to keep things organized as far as the uniformity of the layouts, I would suggest making a template here and sticking to that whenever you create a layout. Now we'll move on to layouts, which is going to be next to content, one of the big starting points. The layout's going to be essentially your canvas, your in this case 1080p, and that's what you use to kind of map out what content you want to see on your screen. So, for example, let's go ahead and let's start off with something that we've already made so far. So we can go to something like let's see. So let's look at one of these LRAMs right here, just to see kind of what Toshiba has put together. So there's lots of a few different elements here. So we have the IPTV that's running, and when you set up IPTV, there's typically going to be a preview of, like a kind of a snapshot of what the channel looks like. And if there isn't a snapshot, that typically means that there's something wrong with maybe the feed that's coming in. So so we have a background here. It appears, the hawk. It looks like a background spin set to the back behind everything else. We have this core messaging item here. Based on the icon that we see on this left side, it looks like an image slideshow. It looks like a stack of images. So that means image slideshow. And basically, it's just cycling through different images here on this left side. We have the IPTV here in a 16:9 format. And then we have looks like more of the background down here, as well as a date and time widgets right here that will come up, and we can go ahead and access a preview to see how approximately that will look. And that won't necessarily show the IPTV moving, just because that does have to pull in a lot of information, but you can just test that out. Oh, so it did pull up a preview. And essentially that'll show you how it looks like from the outset, as to what it'll most look like on the displays. Now, sometimes if say you use different endpoints, the fonts will look a little bit different, but this will give you a good idea of what it looks like out there, especially if you can't access the device physically. This is a good opportunity to just see what's going on once you put that layout out. Then you can just hit the preview button again to stop the preview. We'll go ahead and go back to layouts, and we'll just try to create our own, just so we have an idea of the creation process. And we'll want to use 1080p here, since we're dealing with 1080p devices. You can just name this training test. And say we use our corporate 1080 layout, just so you have an idea of what layouts look in the context, or what templates look in the context of layouts. So I showed this corporate template before. I'm not sure if you quite recognize the cells, but we have a bunch of empty cells here, and that's basically all you have to do is kind of drag and drop different elements in here, as we'll see in just a second. So let's go ahead and assign, say, a background, this first icon on the right side over here, and we'll apply, say, uh, we'll just drag and drop this LWrap here. I'm not going to quite line up, but it'll appear in the back eventually. Now this particular template doesn't quite match the background, but just to show you the basics of adding content to a template is important. We'll do, say, we can take a live TV element out of something that we have here, and this is the only one I've added so far as compatible channels. A bunch of these are just testing, so as I was configuring those channels during deployment. And we can say drop into this. It looks like a 16:9 element here, and make sure the box lights up whenever you're adding it. Probably doesn't want more than one video element, so let's take an image here. Let's say add the hawk, and you'll see it says add content. Make sure it says add content, and then it'll automatically expand to that form. So now you have kind of an idea of how that'll look like. Again, you're gonna want to recognize which content pieces um, will fit the different elements of your template. And say you don't have it there, make sure you have an idea as how you want to resize it, and whether you want to keep certain ratios and whatnot, as far as resolution goes. And you can always apply you know elements on top. You can resize this as well. say we'll make this. Then you can kind of just move this along if you want to. You can send it to, you can move it backwards. And it'll slowly move it behind different elements. So um, okay, so that's essentially how to create a layout there. Again, that's your canvas. So that's essentially uh, one 1080p display. One instance of the fleshing out of um, the 1080p display on your endpoint. So this is what would appear basically if you were to send that out. Um, and that's where you essentially want to start as far as creating your content. What does it look here? Because that's exactly how it'll look once you push it out to your devices.
Yeah, if I could jump in, if you could click on the layouts menu there too.
Sure.
And for Chris and for Jeremy, I've been working with you guys for quite some time. So all of the designs that we've developed for you have basically been converted into layouts, and you can see as um, Chad rolls over these, you'll recognize a lot of those layouts. Um, Another thing here that's important is that you can clone these. So if there's a reason to create a new one, let's say we have a new room and we want it to look just like the fitness schedule LRAP, you can go there, select it, clone it, and that way you're not necessarily starting from scratch with the design process there as well. So
Right.
that's an
Mhm.
important thing to think about. And once you clone it, you can go in and edit it and add anything you want. So
Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
no, so that's kind of the approach that I would suggest, at least to start. And then as you get more familiar with the system, you want to start creating your own layouts and your own templates. Then you have a starting point for you to do that.
Right. Yeah. And cloning is a good place to start. So what you can see uh, on this right side here, you may not see my mouse moving. It may think sometimes the screen share for Teams has some issues with that, but on the right side under this actions category, the middle one where it shows kind of like cascading screens, is a clone layout button. And what that'll do is it'll create a clone, the exact clone of the layout. It'll just have basically the original name of the layout plus some, essentially some random numbers to indicate when it was cloned, and then you can go in and change the name of that, and also change the content, and that way you basically just replicate that versus having to do something like create a template or whatnot. And as suggested before, template's going to be a little bit more advanced. So if you want to do a little bit more standardization besides the cloning process, then that's where you can go. So moving on from layouts, which is basically our canvas, to our playlists. And now what playlists are essentially groups. Essentially, they're just groups of layouts. So basically, this is where you have layouts and you set up, time transitions between the different aspects of it. So we can access, we'll actually just go ahead and add a playlist. MVP. We can give it the same name as our previously created layout. And now we have the playlist set up here. What we can do is go ahead and add a layout out of any of our previously created layouts here. Let's say take one of these LRAP templates. Now, if you're adding, say, just a single layout, it's not important as to the duration. If you just have a single layout, it'll just stay on that layout. If you have something moving like IPTV, that'll continue to move, but it'll just cycle any moving elements here. Like the background won't change, but say this image slideshow on the left-hand side, that'll just continue to cycle through. and the duration is kind of irrelevant when you just have that single layout. So we can go ahead and add that. And let's say we go ahead and add another layout here. Let's say um, theater lobby layout. All right, so now that you have two layouts, the duration is very important because it's going to follow that duration specifically whenever it has to switch between the two. So it's going to be 5 seconds of this and 5 seconds of the next. So in order to change that, you can just, hit the little wrench icon, update the duration to maybe something like, 30 seconds, add that, and then maybe change this to something like um, 10 seconds. And so you have kind of, variable timers on these two different elements of the playlist. And you can go ahead and save that. And then we can go ahead and go to the next page. And we'll see this training test playlist that we made. Basically just a group of two pre-existing layouts and set to 40 seconds. If you recall, we had 30 seconds for the first layout and then another 10 seconds for the second layout. So again, just a group of layouts. That's what a playlist is. Now displays. So this is our first encounter with one aspect of the triple play grouping.
Can Chad, can
Go
we ask
ahead.
a question really quick?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, if you set up the timing for, I'm sorry, this is Stan. If you set up the timing for your playlist and there's overlap between multiple playlists that are scheduled, how does the system handle that? Does it give an error, or does it show
What do
any
you
sort of
mean? What do
overlap?
you mean? What do you mean overlap?
If you have multiple playlists scheduled for the same for the same time frame, does it demonstrate a conflict? So if you have a playlist, a group of playlists
Are
that
you
are
talking
scheduled,
about like a scheduled triggered playlist versus?
right, from like 1 to 135 or whatever, and then you have something that's
Okay,
sort
I
of
mean that's kind of. I'll be getting to events in a second. That's kind of like outside the bounds of the playlist. But just to answer your question, there's a priority list when you go to set up events. So if
okay.
you have an event of higher priority, that's going to precede any other event. So basically, priority is just by number essentially, and you can organize which one will have priority over the other. And if say both of them are triggered at the same time, the one with higher priority will show. But that's going to be in the events section, which will be coming up.
Okay,
Um,
sorry about that. Didn't mean to
hey,
jump ahead.
it's no problem. It's definitely an important topic. I'll show that to you as we go in and try to create events.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No problem. So we have display groups here.
Chad,
And
one more thing I
uh,
was hoping to cover while we're on layouts is
sure.
the video duration. You covered it in the images, but correct me if I'm wrong, but when we're adding a video, if you guys upload a video into the system, you want to add that to a layout and then to a playlist. Just make sure you know the duration of your video, because that needs to be entered into the time element in the
Right, and typically, at least for the most recent versions of our system, it'll automatically um, set the duration as the video as the equivalent of the video element. I don't have any video elements on here, so just this moment, except for the IPTV. So
Okay, no, that
uh,
then
yeah,
forget
but
what I said. That's terrific because
yeah, but it's a good thing to have just in case maybe somebody's going through and editing some stuff and they wanted to set a duration, but they didn't realize that the video has a certain duration to it, and that it's transitioning too early for some reason. It's a good idea to kind of know how long your videos are, so that they play for the full duration if you have like alternating videos or something like that. So yeah, definitely a good topic there. But as far as display groups go, this is essentially one of the groupings that we use. And a display group is essentially a group of displays and endpoints. Um, and what happens is that you have a group of endpoints with an associated playlist and a group of devices. So and then basically we'll go ahead and start with the default playlist just so you understand the idea of associating a playlist here. Now with this all group, this is just a default group, and you'll see the currently associated playlist, which is the playlist all. You can go ahead and change the playlist to something else, like say our training tests, and you can go ahead and add that. Now that'll update the playlist here, and then as well as it'll basically once you've changed the playlist, that'll reflect on all the displays that are associated to that group, which I'll show you in just a second. So now the all display group is updated with the new playlist. We'll go to the devices here. And right now there aren't any devices selected just because this is one of our default pre-made displays and content pieces. So basically you can choose to assign certain displays to this group by the orange marker. Anything that's in this gray color here are devices that are available to set in that particular group. You just have to make sure that they're in the correct orientation, which I can go back and show you in just a second. But for the most part, all these displays that are on site are in 1080p landscape. So you most likely won't have to mess with orientation on that end. It'll just be a matter of assigning these devices to the correct group, and once you've clicked on the submit button, then it'll transition them to that new default playlist. So I'll go ahead and click cancel since I don't really want to change the currently playing content for these on-site displays. But yeah, that's essentially what you do for that. Now, what you can do is you can assign different playlists through the scheduling this way, or which I'll show you in just a second is going to be our event system, which will be uh, most likely the thing that you'll use as far as doing event triggers, event scheduling, things like that, to go ahead and automatically schedule content. So, well, the scheduling itself isn't automatic, but the display of the content will be automatic once you've taken the time to schedule that out. So let's go to events finally. Did anybody have any other questions about the displays before we move forward?
I had a quick question on that other view of the when you had the view of all the different sort of zones laid out. There were a couple different icons on some of those screens.
Right.
Is there something we need to know about difference between that little narrow rectangle with the dot versus some
No,
of
the
them are
narrow
RGB?
rectangle with the dot, that is at this point it's not as important because we used to have a couple of different types of devices. Most of the devices will have this little rectangle with the dot here because it just indicates that it's an STB. But the great majority of our devices that we use nowadays are only STBs, and they don't have like the any other indicator because we've tried to basically consolidate them so that any administration is looking at it as sort of STB versus as say like a PC client or things like that. Say for example, our NUCs used to be identified as PC clients, so the icon would be different there. But the coloring you can actually see here. Gray is not assigned, orange is assigned, and then light gray devices are configured for different geometry. So say if you have something in portrait, I don't recall any devices being in portrait or displays being in portrait mode. on site, so you most likely won't run into this light gray slash, white color. So, all right. Nobody has any questions about, or any further questions about displays, we'll go to the events section. Now we have a couple of events here. I did set up an event according to the spreadsheet that I saw before with the theater countdown, and I'll kind of show you how that's broken down. Um, we'll actually go through that first, and then we can go through the process of actually creating the event from scratch. So when we have the event here, normally like, when you create an event, you'll just see this, and then you'll submit it, and then you'll see, the rest of these the options here. But we'll start from the top. So assign a name, assign a description. Um, normally you want to be a bit more descriptive about description, but you can always just copy the name in there since it's required. Um,
Hey, Chad, before you jump in there,
go ahead.
so just to explain what events are, they are either automated um, events that are read from an external source that will change content on a screen, or in this case here, there is a manual activation from somebody on your team that will change content on the screen. So in the theater area, we have in the lobby, there's normally going to be posters or promotional material that's running outside of that. But on show nights, if a couple minutes before the show starts, somebody there that's working the event, they can hit this trigger and the countdown movie will start. That'll tell people to take their seats. So this is the way you set that up, and then Chad, we should show them also how to activate that as well.
Yeah, sure. So you could do a manual activation, the countdown. You can set up a schedule for when it'll start. As far as the something like a countdown, you'll most likely end up doing a manual activation. Um, and if you're doing something like a one-shot event, you can set a duration there so that it automatically um, transitions back once it's done. That event duration can be set here. Now, as we can see, event control. Uh, basically, the event control is essentially what kind of behavior, how you want the event to activate. So you can have things like external devices. Should you choose to use them to trigger the event, you can have SNMP. You can have an actual schedule. But in terms of a web page, that basically what creates the button for you via the user interface. And we'll look at that in just a second. We'll hop over to triple event in just a second so you can see that. But before we do that, we'll go to the event behaviors to see what exactly is being assigned to those devices. So for the theater countdown right here, I haven't signed this any playlist yet to any specific devices as far as I know. So probably the two. Oh, I actually did. Okay, so I did apply these to the two theater lobby displays. Um, so basically, it'll show you this playlist is assigned, and if you want to refer to the playlist, it's the theater countdown. You may not be able to see the drop downs, but let me go ahead and click on it. But you should be able to see this theater countdown preview on this bottom left side, and that's what's being assigned to the displays on this right side over here. And that's essentially the breakdown of how the event's assigned. And we'll go through that again as we create an event from scratch. But let me hop over back to the main page and show you what that button looks like once we've created that event. And this is the event right here. It's just a theater countdown. You start. In this case, it's a stateful event, so you can end it after 2 minutes. But say if you set it up to be a one-shot event, then it abides by the duration that you set. But
Can I ask a practical question on this, just for
sure.
the end users, you would say?
Sure.
So this would be, is this, so I guess two questions. So the theater countdown, is this something that has to be manually triggered, or could this be scheduled in advance?
This can be scheduled in advance. It's just something that I created.
Okay.
Just it referenced in this sheet. It can be, you can remove it, recreate it. You can do anything with it. It's just something that I have according to the sheet, which can be updated at a later time. Just mostly for training purposes.
Okay. And then if it was not scheduled, if it has to be manually triggered, this is something, where are we logging in? This is on anyone's computer, you're logging into Triple Play, so we could.
Right. Yeah. Just as long as the computer has access to the system. So right now, there's an IP address over here at the top. That's basically just our private Triple Play tunnel that we have for remote access. But the on-site address is different. I think it's like a 10.18 address. I can send that over if you're logged into the network. But yeah, basically all you have to do is type in https:// and then the IP address of the server on the network, and then it takes you to that login page. Again, if it's your first time accessing the page, as we discussed before, you'll see the warning about the security, and that's because it's a self-signed certificate. It doesn't have any external certificate authority that it abides by currently, and that can be set up if Farmington Hills should choose to implement an actual, local certificate for that, if you kind of want to remove that notification. But all you have to do is proceed past the warning screen, and it'll take you to the login.
Yep, and both, Jeremy, you bring up a good point. Scheduled triggers are certainly useful if you know what time something's supposed to start. Let's say the show, the performance. So that's certainly a use case where a scheduled trigger may make sense.
Right.
Now, if we talk about the intermission of that show, right, which is a variable, it's not necessarily locked down to the minute. A manual trigger makes a lot of sense. So if people are milling around the lobby and it's time for the show to start, it's not necessarily tied to a schedule, but I can hit that trigger and start the countdown
Sure.
arbitrarily.
And that's typically a situation where you would use a stateful event to essentially bring up that layout. So.
Can I ask a question about the fire alarm portion?
Sure.
So what was the thought on having that as an activation?
Well, just for context, the demo fire alarm is just some basic content we have. I didn't create that myself. That's just something that comes with the system. But
Okay. Gotcha.
if you wanted to edit it, you can go to triple sign, since it's a signage event, and you can customize it that way. So if we go to demo fire alarm here, looks like a web page for now. I don't think it gets assigned to any devices by default, but basically it's just a placeholder event. So it gets that that one priority, and if you want to move it up, you can just do something like that. But yeah, it's essentially just another event, and that would be more the stateful event in the context of this install. Now, I've seen certain sites where they have an external, like an industrial system that we've kind of custom configured to send alerts to the system, and then our system processes that as an event to override the screens. So that can be something that's done in case you have, say, like a modern fire alert system that's able to send like web notifications. Then we can take those web notifications and kind of translate them into events that'll trigger upon an event occurring on the emergency system end. So just as a possibility in case you want to incorporate something like that.
Okay, so just a side note for our team here, Farmington Hills. We'll look into our system to see if it has that capability, because I think that'd be a good feature too when it does go off and alerts.
Right. Yeah, and that would remove the need to do anything like a stateful or one-shot event. And basically, as soon as something happens as soon as your emergency system detects something and needs to send that a notification, it should automatically send our device some data that will cause all the screens to flip according to how we've configured it. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to events and just say walk through the creation of an event. We can give a same name as we've done before, training test. The same name. Now, stateful is a type of event versus one shot. So the difference between stateful and one shot is stateful is basically when you're in the web interface, um, it basically stays on until you trigger it off. So for something, say like like a variable intermission, you'll want to use something like a stateful event. That way you can turn it on anytime and then turn it off as soon as somebody perceives that most of the audience has re-entered the theater, something along those lines. And then for one shot, if something's definite, like say you have a definite countdown, then you can go ahead and set it to one shot and then set the countdown. And it basically is just you send it and then it'll stay for that duration, and then once it's done with that event for the duration, then it goes back to what it was previously showing. So we'll go ahead and we'll just proceed with the default values here. We'll just submit that. And so now we have our priority here. Now, again, we'll want to make sure we keep in mind these priorities in case any emergency events. I'm sure we'll want to keep at the top. Anything that's less important, we'll want to keep down here. And basically, that just keeps in mind, like if you have multiple events going at the same time, if you have an event that's higher in priority, that will precede any events that are lower in priority. So we want to, let's say we can try to do a schedule here. So we'll select the schedule. So we want to go ahead and click that first and then drag it over. And what we'll do is click on this little clock icon right here. And now the events are scheduled on a weekly basis. So say you can add a schedule item here and say have it scheduled to occur at 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. or we can minimize the time. Or we can move it to some other day as well. And then the gray will show you essentially what the current day is. So, and the way that the scheduling works is repetition on a weekly basis. So
Can you schedule more than a week out, or is it only week by week?
As far as this particular event triggers go, this is just by week. If you want to schedule it for specific monitors, say you want to do like scheduled advertising, what would be preferable to use is I'll show you this over here, but I wanted to show that first. Let me just go ahead and remove all the items from here just so we don't have events going on. But basically, it wasn't triple sign. We'll go to displays, and then we'll go ahead and go to schedule a playlist. So say let's actually expand this to say 50 items. Say for the theater lobby, we wanted to schedule something in advance. What we'll do is use the scheduling here. And then basically we'll go ahead and say, go to May 23rd right here. Oh, sorry. No, this is getting the Grid's confused. Okay, so this is May 17th to May 23rd, and then it is Monday through Sunday down here. So, and this is one day, this is one day. And basically we can just choose a layout or playlist to play in advance. So this is what you would preferably do. So you had like a change in advertising that occurred. And you could schedule that to run on, or if you had like some sort of event you wanted to, maybe some video to start playing at a certain time, then you could do it that way. And that would be more for, like, say, if you had like a certain promotion going on for maybe that day or a week. You'd set up events that would show that video from time to time, you know, and then it basically would only show at the time that you'd want it to show. Now, if you wanted to say do something like maybe you have a certain piece of signage that you only want to display for a certain period of time, you can also do something like that. That would be set up via the layout section. So let's go to our training layout so I can. Oh. We'll go to our training test here. And so there's a settings button here that'll show you the client information, but where is that button? Oh, right here. Yeah, it's the same. So basically, you can set a start and expiration date. So you have a layout that you only want to appear starting, say, June 1st to June 30th. Maybe it's like some sort of limited time summer event. Then you could go ahead and create the layout, add it to a playlist, and just have a start and expiration there. That way, it'll only start when you want it to start, and then it'll end as soon as the event's ended. So it's, you know, it's out of the playlist when it's irrelevant. And then, afterwards you can go ahead and just remove that element, or you can keep it on there and say if it's like an annual event, but all you want to do is essentially just change the dates on it for next year or something like that. And then when it starts up again, it'll start up next summer or something like that, and then expire when it needs to expire. So that's another way of setting up kind of like a scheduled layout there.
Yeah, and for the Farmington team, I know we've discussed there's a lot of events that you're promoting in advance. This is actually a really important feature. So as you're creating new layouts for those events, using that start and stop date is a really handy tool. If you apply it at the layout level, when you drag it into the playlist, your existing playlist, it'll play everything in that playlist, including this promotion for a limited time. When that promotion date has expired, it'll fall off the playlist, but everything you've already set up in there will continue to play. So you can kind of have variable times associated to each asset without really having to redo the entire playlist.
Right, and it keeps from from having to essentially go back and re-edit things. Basically, if you guys have a time allotted to make these edits, you put everything that you need to in advance. Just make sure that if it needs a start or expiration, that you have it set there. And yeah, as soon as the start date or expiration date hits, it'll either enter or leave that layout. All right, so that's generally how the signage feature works. There are other features of this that are more administration related. Say diagnostics, for example. It might be useful to do something like this, but basically, it just gives you an idea of what things are playing. It takes a little bit of time to load because it has to kind of get that data from the devices, but well, yeah, it's a good way of essentially checking, what the devices should be playing, whether they're online or things like that. So, kind of a good way of determining, whether devices are are showing what they need to show. All right. Did anybody have any questions about signage in general? All right. So we'll move on to we've already covered triple event to some extent since we covered signage. So those are the two big things as far as basically creating and scheduling content. Now you can use something like quick drop to change different things on the fly if you really need to. I'm sure somebody's out there that's going to be actually logging in and changing things, but you can do something like updating a layout. We'll just find the layout that we're looking for here in the quick drop section. So say training test. And basically it'll show you all the different cells here from the quick drop layout. Say you wanted to change the default channel. Say by selecting this cell, it'll be highlighted in green.
This might be it right now.
Okay.
And then basically, if you have content that's outside the system that you want to change it to, then you can basically drag and drop from your computer to put on this.
I'm sorry. Quick question. I'm sorry. This is Stan again. Quick question. You have this is content that we can drag and drop here. But if we were to say have an individual wanted to say something live, is that a possibility with this drag and drop portion?
For like a live stream,
Yeah.
no, that would have to be configured from the GUI itself. Just because in order to create the live stream item, it would have to be a live stream would likely be some sort of like RTMP or RTSP, I would guess, or maybe some sort of HLS stream. So that would have to be set up as an item itself, and then we'd have to. I'm trying to think of like a particular use case. So say like an RTSP stream, what we would normally ideally do is set up a virtual like video adapter to kind of ingest that, and then use that adapter as a as a signage element essentially. So let me go.
It wouldn't work the same as IPTV, where we would have a dedicated stream coming in that we could utilize for any sort of live broadcast.
If you have a multicast stream that's running, it would work essentially like IPTV. In this case, I think all of the cards in the back are ClearQuam cards. So if you had, say, maybe another device that's on the network pumping out multicast, then we could just basically create a service that points to that multicast address and add that as a content item. But let me just show you how that would appear. Like say,
Like, how do you guys live broadcast to channel 8 if you want to?
Yeah. No, it's ugly, so
You
ugly.
can mute us.
But we could.
yeah. So say if you had like you wanted to add a live TV item. Basically, we would just make the services available. Like you'll see a bunch of these. These are the ones set up currently because I haven't received any preferences yet from Harry. I think about what channels he wants configured because according to Comcast there are like 56 different frequencies, but the cards only support up to a total of 32 different frequencies. Of course, each of those frequencies supports multiple channels, but so these are the ones that we've configured so far, and these each would have a multicast address, and we'd basically just add that and create a live TV item out of that, and then it becomes just like this item right here, this WWJ item that I created, and you'd pop that in like essentially any other content piece. It's just a 16:9 item, but you wouldn't be able to do that on the fly just because it would have to be configured beforehand. But that's quick drop. And let's go ahead and go to triple TV, just since I just recently discussed that, to give you an idea of how some of these adapters are working. So again, right now we only have a few adapters that have been, configured with frequencies for these channels. And each of these channels are, will have, or each of these adapters will have a frequency, and each of those frequencies will be associated with a certain number of channels. And basically, this little blue graph here just shows you the input, the throughput there, and it's a good idea to check on that. Say if maybe the signal blacks out for some reason, you're not seeing IPTV anymore. That's a good place to check to see if maybe we're not getting signal on that frequency or on that adapter for some reason, just for troubleshooting purposes. I won't get too definitely here because most of this is typically pre-configured. And you only really need to go on here to kind of check the status of the signal. And so we'll move on to triple care, which is, I would say, at least in my case or in any administrator's case, probably going to be the most visited section of the entire system, just because it allows you to oversee a bunch of the the different configurations and groupings of these different clients. So, and we can go ahead and go from right to left again. I'm not going to discuss all of these too in depth. If you have any questions about it, feel free to answer them. But I'll go over them quite basically. And so services. So triple care services is essentially the channel lineup. So say we have a device in TV mode. When they receive the channel lineup, it's going to be essentially labeled according to this list right here. So we have ABC, WWJ, things like that. And channel 1 is going to be this. Like if say you have a TV and if you had a remote, I don't recall. Trying to remember if there were any remotes configured at all. You can change channels from this interface as well. But say if you had a remote and somebody was flipping through the channels, ABC would be channel number 1, ABC2 would be channel number 2, and so on and so forth. So this is essentially just a channel list. And this is kind of where we would configure, say, like an external stream as a service. We would essentially just add it as another channel, and then that channel becomes, or as a service, and that becomes another element to manipulate with the signage system. Now let's move to, I'm going to skip over a couple of these just because they're more for like administration configuration, more for like somebody like me who's actually deploying the system, or an administrator who's trying to change something about the box to have it display in a different mode or a different resolution or something like that. But let's go to client management set-top boxes. This is a very commonly visited screen here, and it basically just gives us a list of all the clients and all their a bunch of different information about them. IP address, MAC address, serial numbers, software versions, what the device is, what client groups they're part of. And essentially, you'll see a couple of devices here that have one as a serial number. Those are actually the video wall systems. We don't pull their serial numbers automatically because those aren't standalone STBs. Those are actually Intel NUCs. So they're like a combination of different pieces, essentially like a miniature computer. But the rest of these that start with the Kilo November, those are all aminos. So you can identify them by serial number there, as well as your MAC address to uniquely identify them. And this is where you'd be able to do things like send commands. So we can select a couple of these, select a command, and you can do things like reboot them, ping them, issue a software upgrade. You can also change channels, which will come up. It'll give you a list of channels here as well. So And then let's see. I'll cover client groups briefly. It does stretch into a lot of other configuration aspects, but basically the gist of client groups is that you can associate groups that are, say, in TV mode. Again, I don't know the extent to which you guys will be using TV mode, but say for screen control, which we're still working out technically, say for screen control, like say if you wanted to turn TVs on and off, what you'd typically do is you'd create a group of displays that, you know, that essentially share the same TV model, and then you'd assign a specific controller to them so that they all follow the same protocol when you're trying to send a command to turn them on or off. And that way, you know, even if you send a command to one individual unit, it'll follow that assigned protocol versus, like, you know, say if you have a Samsung display, you don't want it to follow like a planar command, and, you know, vice versa. So that's kind of the application we have here as far as client grouping.
Okay, quick question.
Go ahead.
You were saying that you have the different models that are be grouped so that you could actually turn them on or off. Is there a way to disable features like on the TV themselves, like changing the channels? So if someone's in the gym and they decide I want to watch something else, they don't walk up to the TV and start switching channels?
So typically there's a couple of different things you can do. So say if you're in the gym, like I think the gym is using a signage layout right now. So by default signage, if you include a live TV item in it, the channel isn't configurable. So what you'd end up doing is just making an item for that specific
just a
channel
graphical
and just putting it in
representation.
there. And then by default, it doesn't allow you to change it. So the alternative config is to have it so that you can change it. So as long as you don't change that, it just stays in that channel. Now, if you wanted to make that configurable, actually, let me show you how to make that configurable. Let's say if you have maybe a party or something that would like to change it, like some sort of uh, group event or something like that. Let's go to one of those layouts. Let's say the live TV full screen layout. We can update that. And so what you do if you wanted to make this this live TV item changeable, you wanted to be able to issue channel changes to it. What you do is just go in and change the options by selecting this orange button, and then just select interactive and apply. And once you've applied it, you'll have to go ahead and click the save button in the top left to save that. And what that makes it does is it changes the layout, or it changes that live TV item to be customizable, and it'll abide by the channel list. Now, alternatively, say you want to, if it's, you know, just showing TV, if you want to change something to TV mode, you can do something like, let's say, go to triple care and you can set up service groups. But service groups only apply in TV mode. So say if you have something in signage that is interactive that allows you to change channels, it doesn't follow the same rules as would be stipulated by the service groups. I know this is getting a bit complicated, but and again, if you guys want to go through some more um, a deeper configuration, then I'm free to help out with that additionally. But basically, this is basically just groupings of services. So right now, these are the channels that are available to triple sign. So say if you went in and made that live TV item interactive, then they would be able to switch between all of these channels. So if you wanted to limit, you know, any of your signage displays a certain number of channels, you know, I would make sure that this is, you know, this is trimmed and pruned to make sure that they're not accessing any channels that they don't need to. But we can go further in depth once, you know, more of the specific functionality for each of these displays needs to be fleshed out. But that's the gist of that. And as far as this is concerned, again, I don't want to go too much into depth because I know we've already covered a lot of information, especially from the Stage platform point of view. But if you have any questions about this, feel free to shoot them at me. And I'll go ahead and go ahead. Sorry, I heard somebody.
I was going to say, Chad, we're about halfway through our allotted time here.
Sure.
Would it make sense to take a short break and then reconvene in 5 minutes or so? Does anybody need to stop, or do you want to keep going? Any opinions out there?
A short break is good.
And
Okay, what do you guys say?
Take
5 minutes,
5?
10 minutes?
Let's do 5.
Okay. Well, I think we can get restarted then, Chad. I'm going to hand the screen back over to you, so feel free to share.
Sure. All right. So as before the break, basically I've covered all the elements that I wanted to cover and to their particular depth so far. Just because there are a lot more different things about each of these elements so we could go in more depth about. But I know I did provide a lot of information today, so I kind of wanted to let that sink in. And if we need to do any additional training or in any other follow-up, that we're free to do so, either in a group or individual basis. And if you have any questions right now, this is probably the perfect opportunity to ask them. And if we wanted to go further into these features, we could do so with this time that we have.
Any questions from the Farmington Hill folk?
I have one. I think we probably have a lot, but
Sure.
so okay, in terms of programming all these screens, I think we have some work to do figuring out what our plan is for what content goes where when.
Sure.
But in terms of access, is this something we have to be on site? You said this is a site-specific
No,
IP to log into this, or can this be done remotely?
I mean, typically with a remote access, they would we've seen in most cases is that a VPN is created of some sort by the client for them to access it. We have our own tunneling service that only the engineers and developers have access and the support team, of course, to help support the server. But as far as having employees access, that would have to be handled by the client. So by you guys, whether it's some sort of VPN or maybe some sort of external portal, I believe. So however you guys want to manage that, I don't know if anything like that's been in place, but that's typically what's done is some sort of VPN access.
And Chad, you have the actual the address and the logon screen
Right.
address, correct?
Yeah. So yeah, that's still going to be an IP address. I do have the local IP address.
Let's make sure we
Can you give us that?
Yeah, sure. So the local IP address, as it is on the Farmington Hills network, is, let's see, 10.18.100.5.
And there is an admin account currently set up, correct?
Correct. And right now it has its default password as admin. So right now it's not super secure. So
Admin is that the
right.
login? Okay.
Right. So I would go ahead and change that if you need to, or probably that'd be most preferable, especially for anybody who has access to the same network that the server is located. I've also seen instances where they basically segmented the network or that IPTV VLAN from the rest of the network. So, uh, basically that the access itself is segmented in terms of the network. So, however that you guys want to handle that, whether it's that or um, some updating all the passwords and whatnot. Either way, or a combination of the two would probably be the best. But
Well, Chad, it probably makes sense to kind of go over users and how to create users and permissions.
sure, yeah.
What else am I
So
asking?
yeah, I'm not exactly sure how many will be using this feature, but we can go over that. So so user accounts. So again, right now there is only the admin user right here, which is the default administrator user. Now we can go through the process of adding a user here. And basically it's going to ask for username, name, email address, password, and email address is another piece of information there. It doesn't necessarily send anything to that email address. It's just another piece of identifying information. But the most important one piece of information would obviously be the username, and then of course the password, which will also be entered here. So the language and the permissions. So under permissions here, so for custom, there's going to be a lot of different elements. Say for a normal end user, um, we'll want to keep them away from things like system, triple CMS, like HP system management, not necessary. So say if they're just editing content, what we'll most likely do is end up just giving them access to triple sign. And then basically you can assign all of these pieces here. Again, depends on like how many people are coming up with the content, if certain people are in charge of making certain types of content. Again, it's not like a gigantic installation, and there's like a total of 30 something displays, I believe. So I imagine there's maybe like one or two people working on the content. So I imagine just giving them this type of access to triple sign would be enough. Don't select simple mode, of course, because that's um, uh, just as a warning. Don't select simple mode, or else these other options won't be selectable. Simple mode is mostly just for very limited access, essentially. So there should be probably a bigger warning on that, but I would recommend not selecting simple mode. But everything else, these are the categories that you saw previously when we were discussing the signage mode, hierarchy, content, templates, etc. And you can limit that, say if you have somebody that's only supposed to be adding content, or somebody that's only supposed to be editing layouts, and you can further manage that by also creating user groups if you want to. Say you only want X user to access these layouts, or X user to access these displays or display list or something like that. You can further make that further granular if necessary. But in terms of like a signage end user, I would say that's probably all you need. I imagine the signage end user doesn't need something like triple event, right? Because I wouldn't think that the person coming up with the poolside content is also one triggering the theater countdown. So the less accessibility you give the person, the more secure it is. So I would just try to keep in mind exactly what each of these um, users are doing, and then limit access to exactly what they need, and expand if it needs to be expanded, because it can be expanded on the fly. They just have to log out and log back in, essentially. But yeah, that's the gist of creating the user account. Again, if I would limit to the account creation to maybe just one or two people, whoever's actually administering the system, and will be using things like triple care to do it. So we don't have a lot of this authentication information being broadcast to too many people. So, um, but yeah, that's any questions about or any further questions about authentication?
Yeah, the Farmington Hills team. I know you supplied us with a list of users. So yeah, we do have an existing list of users to access the system. I guess maybe the next
Okay.
exercise there is to identify, if there are any limitations we want to put on that initial user list,
Right.
and what are they? And then, yep, we can go ahead and proceed and
Yeah,
get
then
that
we can
set
go
up.
ahead and create. Yeah, that's another thing as well. Making sure that we give them the least permissions that they need to perform what they need to do. So, and once we get that information, we can go ahead and create the accounts. And if you had maybe like a specific passwords they wanted to use for that, for their account access, just because the whole authentication is just managed by our server, it doesn't go out to like any external source. So as far as like um, manage that, it's going to be limited essentially to the system and its primary administrators. So the more information we can get about users, passwords, permissions beforehand, the easier it'll be to kind of flesh out all the authentication.
Okay. Well, after this call, then I will send out an email, and we can start that process.
Sure. Did anybody else have any additional questions, perhaps about signage or maybe some more administration tips about the endpoints, things like that?
I have a question that might be more for Mike. I know when Chris and I have been working with you, sort of getting a lot of the design stuff set up in terms of the graphics. How many or what different types of templates have you guys created that are going to be in there for us to use on day one? Because want to make sure that we're not having to create a lot of stuff from scratch while we're setting this up. Has there been a sharing of those templates, or do those live in triple play, or is that something that you're going to send to us outside of this?
So the templates, we're basically what we decided on was to do most of the design of those templates externally, right, using Photoshop or those tools. So I provided, I believe, Jeremy, you have the link, but I'll send it again. Chris, I think you have it too, but a link to all those Photoshop files.
Okay.
So you can use those, you can edit those, and then it's a matter of, uploading those as image files.
Yep.
And maybe we can walk through that process there, Chad. So you upload them as image file, place them in a layout, and then assign them to a playlist.
Yeah, we got that part of it. I just wanted to make sure I didn't realize you'd sent those Photoshop files.
Yep. You should have everything. I think I even gave you the After Effects file for, the motion graphics. So I will send it again.
Okay. But yeah, thank you. I think I lost it.
Yeah, I have the link for the location of all that.
All right, then you don't have to resend it. Chris
Okay.
can send me it.
And just to kind of iterate on that, as we discussed previously, if you guys were happy with any of the other pre-existing content pieces, you can just clone the layouts and kind of customize from there. That way, you already have kind of the preset background, and you have kind of the placement of the sidebar and things like that, and date and time widgets. So if whatever your idea was similar to that, you can kind of just clone the layout and work from there.
Yeah, Chad, if you could drill into actually those layouts real quick and those playlists. I just want to show them quickly how they're configured.
Right. So if we go to, we'll start from the beginning. So triple play, triple sun, of course, our signage platform, and then we'll just go to layouts here. You'll see our list of layouts. And I think one of the ones that I brought up was the core messaging right here. And then we have, all the different elements here, right?
Yeah.
And
So
say,
this is a good one. So in this case here, we do have a specific layout that I've created. And again, you guys have the PSD files for this. So if you want to change out the background or change out, the way it looks generally, you can do that. So there's a couple of different elements there. We kind of covered this earlier. We have the live video where we see Oprah. We have the time and date, which are those two elements on the bottom right. We have the background element, which frames the whole thing up. The one here, though, where that's going to have kind of that ongoing or that constantly changing content is that sidebar that says core messaging. So what's there is a image slideshow. And so when that's previewed, you'll see that rotates every few seconds. So if we want to add to that, so
just to give an idea of how the preview will look like. So
yeah, so there's the live video would be playing. We've got messaging on the left-hand side, and then that'll automatically advance. And I think that's on every 7 or 8 seconds. So Chad, what I like to show them is how to add to that image playlist, or and that would be under the content button, right?
Okay, you wanted to edit the image slideshow. Is that what you want?
We want to edit the image slideshow.
Okay,
so core messaging was the sidebar that was shown there, and you can see we have 3 different items in there, right? So if we want to add something else to that,
you can add something that's existing, or you can upload another image to it, and preferably you'd want to follow the same resolution, the 830, but it looks like 830 by 1676, and that would rotate essentially through that entire slideshow of images in that same scale. So
on this topic, Mike, I know we also have the live polling data from WebTrack for like today's events and the event schedule, things like that.
Yep.
Can that information be included as part of one of these image slideshows, or if we're going to have that live data polling things to do for today's events, does that have to just be its own thing on that left sidebar? It can't be part of the slideshow.
That'll be like its own thing. We just have to format it to that scale. So especially if it's a web element, because it has to access it.
So we couldn't alternate between today's schedule and.
Oh no, you could. You basically just add another layout with this everything else the same. Just have the sidebar element changed.
So so let's take a look at that. So Jeremy, the live event information is still under development, but you'll see here. Stay there real quick.
Okay.
You'll see that there are several image slideshows we've created, right? So we have a sidebar for core messaging, and then we have a sidebar for fitness or poll viewing, or image slideshows anyway. So let's go to playlist real quick, Chad. And let's go to one of the LRAP ones. So fitness, I think, would be one. Maybe go to page 1.
Oh, oops. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, fitness center.
Yeah, let's go to fitness center. There you go. Try fitness center. Okay, so there we have 2 different LRAP templates that are being
I get it.
right? So we have one that is probably showing the fitness sidebar and one that's showing the generic sidebar.
I got you. So you would set the today's events to run for 45 seconds, and then you'd set the same layout with that
Yeah, just change the
slideshow
sidebar
for
element.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Yep. So yeah, you have two different image slideshows kind of applied to the same template, and then you kind of line them up here, and you'll rotate through the generic.
Okay.
So generic information, then the fitness information, and then could be the schedule of events information there. So.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So that's how those are lined up. And then if we go into, let's do something that's more straightforward, like concession left and right. You'll see that those are basically it's a full screen layout. There's no different zones in there. It's just a simple image that's dropped in, and that'll play back forever for that one particular device.
Yeah, and in the case of a single layout, time is really irrelevant. So it can be 5 seconds, it can be an hour if you wanted to. It's just when it's a single layout, it just repeats that. And if you have if you have like a live TV element, it's not going to just continue to refresh it. It's just going to play that consistently. So you don't have to worry about setting a duration even if it has a live TV element, because it's not going to reset the element after the duration is done. The duration is just mostly for if you have two different things going on. Say you have like the two different sidebar elements, or maybe you have live TV going on for 30 seconds, and then some sort of video on sort of promotional video or something like that going on for like the next minute or so, or however long its duration is.
That makes sense.
All right, we have another unrelated question over from the group over here. Is there anybody who knows about the audio capabilities of the large screens in the lobby? I know that maybe that's even outside of triple play. Maybe that's not.
Well, triple play is going to be playing video.
Yeah, if we're scheduling video in the lobby, like, do we know? I guess we have not tested yet. If there's audio in there, or how do we turn that on?
Will Green, you're on the call, or Chad, you guys would know probably the best.
Yes, are you talking about the video wall, or are you talking about the?
Yeah, the video wall. No, the video wall. The
video wall screens don't have any internal sound capabilities, but that I believe was going to be connected to AVI-SPL's speaker system. They were going to be installing speakers on either side of the video wall, and that actually is going to be generated from the content. Those speakers would be connected directly to the player that is driving that video wall. So it wouldn't be the screens that are pushing the sound; it would be the player.
What's this?
So
triple play is pushing the audio.
Well, I mean, essentially, yes. It depends on if the content itself has audio. If it does, then it would route through the player.
If we insert a video in the triple play that has audio in it, it will play audio in the lobby.
If the speakers are already installed and connected to the player correctly, it'll play audio.
I have a question. Okay, cool. I have a question for like more advanced, like in the future. Would we, from our TV studio that they set up for us, would we be able to set up a camera in our TV studio and then just pop in live on that video wall in the lobby?
Yeah, I could see that going. So say we have a camera. I know a lot of times for cameras we ingest RTSP feeds, and that basically just we ingest that into our system as sort of like a virtual element, then we add that to signage as basically just as any other content item that you would see, like live TV, and we do it that way.
Okay.
But if we get more specifics on basically how the camera is trying to communicate with the server, preferably the camera feed would be going on somewhere that's routable from the server that we can actually see the feed coming through. Then we can go ahead and do some testing to make sure it's coming through that way.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's a follow-up item because I believe that there was an encoder that was part of this project,
Oh, okay.
and so I don't know.
Yeah, in that case, basically, it would depend on how essentially the camera is feeding that out. So if there's like say an HDMI output from the camera, then what you would do is you would put that into the back of the encoder, and then the encoder would create its own multicast address, and we would just set like any other multicast that the server would use. So, but I believe that was still being finalized as far as where that low latency encoder would be located and how that content would be ingested into it. So, whether it's like SDI or some other conversion or something like that.
Yeah. So Jen, that is part of the plan, and it is possible, and the equipment is there and available. It sounds like we need to finalize a few things in order to get that online, but that is part of the architecture of the design here.
Great.
While we're here, Chad, on the screen, can you go
Sure.
into the Hawk generic full screen playlist?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Yeah, I believe this is the one that's being displayed on the video wall right now.
Yeah. So this is it, and I think that we have two different layouts that are here, guys. We have the on the left-hand side, I believe that is an image slideshow, which is showing full screen ads for 15 seconds, or 8 seconds apiece. And then on the right-hand side, we have that core messaging video loop. That's that 1 minute loop with welcome to the Hawk and social media. So if you wanted to add more things here, and then this is the one that's shown on the video wall, and it's showing by default on a couple things. So this is kind of the one you want to add to as you're thinking about those upcoming events and some of the things we talked about pulling out of the quarterly planner, those types of things. So now to add to here, well, we kind of reviewed it already, but you want to import the media, you want to create a layout, and for those specific events, what I would do is create the layout, put that start and stop information in there, and then put it into this playlist. And that way, it'll be automatically be added here. It'll start when it needs to start, and when the promotion's over or the event's over. So you're not you don't have out of date content up on the wall.
In terms of images, like I don't think we'll be doing too much of it. Like that basketball, I don't think we'll have just a huge image on there that much. But
Sure.
just so we know, what's the resolution and specs for an image to display properly on that largest video wall?
Right now we have it set to 1080p.
Yep. So 1920 by 1080 is it's what is being shown there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and those some of those full screen images obviously are just there for placeholder.
Yeah.
Yep. But this is that main one there that sits in the front lobby, and then when we are going to trigger or show something on that front lobby, you can either schedule a new playlist for that player for that screen. You can trigger it. There's a couple different ways to show other things on there. But I think as you get in there and you start to explore and poke around and see how the various content elements are related to the devices, it'll start making more sense, obviously.
Yeah, it just takes like a little bit of tinkering and just getting used to the workflow, and it comes pretty easily. So I would just give it a shot and.
Okay. Any other questions from Farmington Hills team? Okay, Chad, what else can we cover?
Trying to think of anything else that might have been mentioned. I think I mentioned before that we still have to finish off basically tuning the channels. So if I don't know who's coming up with that. I believe Will's been communicating with Harry as far as seeing which channels are preferred, but that'll be straightened out as soon as we get a preference, and that's just a matter of some configuration from my end, and we'll expand that lineup for you guys so that you have more I guess age appropriate options for the different parts of the site. So that's one thing.
I think along those lines, you did mention that if we have the live TV element within a layout,
Sure.
Then the user is not able to change the channel, right?
By default, right?
Oh, by default, but they still
Right. Yeah, you could.
can. Okay.
When I showed you before, you can set the live TV element interactive, and you can send a command to change it from the user interface.
Even when that's within a layout.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
This is more of a question around getting continued assistance as we move forward and we start utilizing this.
Sure.
I'm not sure what, how that's set up in terms of how we reach out, who we have access to for how long in terms of this initial stage of getting rolling in this over the next like month or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. So in this time, since we're still kind of in the deployment phase, I know Joe and he's working with our development team to get the web schedule straightened out. I'm looking into some of the TV control related aspects, and we're still needing to configure those channels. We're still technically in the deployment phase where you have access to me and Joe as engineers. Later on, once the system is essentially finalized, then we'd be getting you in touch with our support team, assuming that I'm sure you guys have some sort of support contract with us. But we'll be getting in touch with information with our support team, and then you can contact them at their times. I'm not exactly familiar with all their times, but yeah, they would be the ones assisting you on a day-to-day basis, for troubleshooting and things like that. But for the time being, just feel free to contact either me or Joe, since we're still working on a couple of implementations and kind of finalizing the full functionality of the system.
All right, thank you. That helps.
Not much. How you doing?
There will be a document set that will be coming out as well. Not sure if that was Chris. You probably heard that already. But there'll be a document set coming out with instructions on if it's hardware, software.
I didn't even look at it, but you're right. He does have that kind of a background.
You got it. We're here.
That's what his degree is.
Jimmy, mute yourself.
Hey Jimmy, we need you to mute yourself.
Sorry about that.
All right, thanks.
Go ahead, Gabe.
Oh, that was really it. Just making sure that you guys knew that there is still documentation that's being developed and that'll be reviewed with the team, so we know exactly what those decision trees look like and how you guys can get help. But we built Kelly and Jeff and everybody else had a lot of foresight into making sure that you guys continue to get white glove service throughout a fairly significant period for this.
Just out of curiosity, this is Stan real quick. Are we going to have access to this video of this training?
You will actually. There are a couple different ways we can do it, and I don't know, Chad, Mike, if you want to hit that. But if you do, you should have access through this chat through Teams, and if you don't, we should be able to send you a link to it as well.
Both ways. So you'll have access through the chat, through the meeting. I will also capture the video, download it, put it onto Dropbox, and send everybody a link.
That'll be wonderful.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
And I can also send perhaps some any additional user guides for some of these features if you guys want to get more in depth on that. Just feel free to send me an email and I can respond with some sort of link to those as well.
Yeah, if you Chad, if you want to send those to us, we're kind of compiling all that documentation, and then we'll be handing it over to Farmington Hills.
Sure. Yeah. Let me collect like the guides for any of the features I discussed, and I'll send that over to you and can make that available.
Okay. All right. Any other items to cover, Farmington Hills? Any other questions? I know we have a few things to follow up on. We will follow up on the streaming and the live broadcast configuration there. We'll also send a follow-up note regarding users access information. Jeremy, I'll send you that link to the source files again.
Yeah, and then also, just let us know when the live pulling off of WebTrack is happening, so we can.
Yep. We will. We'll do that. That's still under development. Now for the interactive, that's kind of its own thing. So that's something else.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that separately.
Is the interactive kiosk also running off of Triple Play?
Nope, that runs off of a different platform. So, but there's a. We'll cover that separately. Okay, but let's see. We need to also finish off the tuning of the channel, and I will send out the video link for the training session. So those are follow-up items. Are there anything there I missed?
Follow up. I'm still personally working on TV control as far as being able to remotely turn those TVs on and off. So
TV control. You know what? We mentioned audio, Chad, a little earlier. Question came I thought of when you upload a video content.
Mhm.
Can you are there audio controls on that? Can you mute a particular video or change the volume of that?
No, actually not. It just basically plays out any audio video coming out that stream.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like say if you had some sort of like maybe like I'm trying to think of what would happen. I think it only plays one stream at a time, so I think it would essentially be like a coin flip of whichever audio stream it receives first. Say you had like multiple multiple audio streams going at the same time.
Well, from my thinking, it's more of an awareness. So the team knows if you drop a video in and that it has audio, it's going to play back audio on the system. So
yeah. As soon as you put anything with audio on there, it will play out.
Okay. So one thing to keep in mind, and this is something we discuss with all of our clients, whenever you're in an environment where you have content that's repeating, Sometimes you don't want that audio to play because it's going to drive your staff crazy over time. If you have somebody that's kind of in that station or nearby that during the open hours of the facility. So just be thoughtful about that when you do encode any new video content that's going in. Obviously, if it's a movie or something that you want the audio, then you definitely want it. But if it's an ad that maybe it's more visual than the information is more visual than audio, or you probably want to err on the side of not having the audio on. Up to you.
No, agreed. Less is more with the audio in this scenario.
Along those lines, Chad, one of the situations, we'll ask this on behalf of some people who might not be on the call from Farmington Hills. For the video wall, if we have multiple screens, if we're embedding multiple channels at once or dividing up the video wall into multiple different TV feeds, where maybe it's a Saturday and they want to have a few different games on, is there a way to prioritize audio if you have different, is there an administrative setting where we have the ability to select which stream is getting audio played? I heard you say coin flip earlier, and that caught my
Yeah, that
ear.
happened for definitely something like in Amino where multiple video isn't normally a thing. But I'd have to look into that. Just because that particular signage player is a little bit more advanced. I don't know if we have any more granularity as far as audio control, but I'll take a look into that and we can just add that to the list as far as follow up.
Please do. That was actually one of the considerations for that player.
Okay.
A conversation with Michael earlier, so I'll have that on my list. We can probably discuss separately.
Yeah, I believe we have another implementation that may have done audio priority. I haven't configured it myself, so yeah, I'll look into that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we've covered a lot of ground. There's a lot to digest. I think the video here and the follow-up information will be helpful. Again, as Chad said, Triple Play is available for any questions. The Toshiba team is certainly available for any questions at any time, and we can help you track down any information about the system as well. So feel free to contact us. But if there's no other questions or no other pressing topics right now, I think we can probably end the session, and then we'll send out some follow-up emails. And I'm sure that as we go through things, as you guys get in the system and play around a little bit, you're going to have additional questions, and we will definitely be able to schedule follow-up time as needed. Does anybody else have anything before we go, or does that sound like a plan?
That sounds good, Mike. Thank you.
Okay. Well, terrific, everyone. Thank you for spending the morning with us. And at this point, we will conclude the session. Chad, thank you very much for all the great information.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I'm sure we will all be in touch very shortly. So thank you again. And this concludes the session.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Have a great day, everybody.